One of the reasons I love to quilt is that it really helps me unwind. Quilting helps me escape from the craziness of the world. As a bonus, I get to create something beautiful. However, quilting isn't my only way to unwind. I also really like going for long walks and I love to read. I have loved to read since I was a child. In school, I was often known to have a book propped up inside of my textbook, and I would read that book during lessons. Don't worry, I did really well in school, even though I would do that. My go-to books to read are usually mystery novels and suspense novels. That, of course, has changed throughout the years, but right now that is really what I'm reading a lot. Those books can really be heavy to read and aren't always great to unwind and relax to. So I decided to look around and see if I could find some books that have a quilting theme to them. I, of course, found a ton of books and I purchased a lot of them so that I could do some reviews on them and share them with you. I'm only reviewing 5 of them in this video, but as I read more, let me know in the comments if you liked this type of video and if you would like me to share a review on some more of the quilting books I purchased. I already knew before I started researching and trying to find some quilting novels that there were some out there. I've received 2 in some of my Jenny's Countdown to Christmas boxes, and a few years ago I read this book. This book is called A Quilt for Christmas, and it is by Melody Carlson. This isn't going to be one of the books I review today since I read it a while ago and I don't remember it really well, but I will tell you that I absolutely loved it. I do remember that, and it is the perfect book to get you into the Christmas spirit. As a bonus, it is also a really quick read. Now, before I review each of these 5 novels individually, I do want to point out that I did enjoy reading all 5 of them. Of course, some of them I enjoyed more than others, and I'll try to explain why as I review each one. Now, one thing that I noticed right away when I was reading the books, that even though quilt was maybe mentioned in the title or in the description of the book, it wasn't always the forefront plot in the novel. So I will point that out with each book, but that didn't really take away from the story for me in one way or another. I just felt like I should point it out since I'm kind of doing this review based around quilting novels that I found. The first book I'm going to review for you was my favorite book in the list of 5. I was really surprised at how much I loved this book because it wasn't a mystery novel or a suspense novel, which is what I've been reading a lot lately. However, despite that, when I read the description of the book, it definitely caught my attention, so I put it on my list to read, and I'm really happy that I did. So I purchased this book on my Kindle, and it is called After the Storm, the story of Hannah Applegate Benson Stone. Yes, the title is a mouthful. It was a beautifully written historical fiction novel written by Carrie Flanagan. This book really felt like it was a true nonfiction historical book. It develops through journal entries and it starts at Hannah's childhood and works up to her old age. I felt like this was a true story of loss and resilience. I really don't want to say too much and give a lot of this book away, but I highly, highly recommend it. As I said before, I have been reading since I was a young child. Some of my favorite books were the Little House on the Prairie novels. I absolutely love those. If those are books that you like, I definitely think you would enjoy this book. I really did feel like quilting was at the forefront of this storyline. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but it really felt like a big part of this book and I enjoyed reading it so much. I highly recommend it. Next, I want to move on to 2 books that were very, very quick reads. In fact, I read both of these books in one day, and actually I read them both in just a few hours because I read each one while my husband was watching some football games on TV. Is football season over yet? I'm just kidding. But yeah, they were both very quick reads and I enjoyed both of them. I think both of these books are a great pick if you don't have a lot of downtime to read, or maybe you have a flight or something like that coming up that you would like to bring a book along and read and don't want to be weighed down by a lot of characters or a complex plot line. These two would definitely be really good picks. Now, even though I lumped these two books together, they are very, very different. One of them is sort of an Amish romance novel, and the other is what I would consider a light mystery novel. Now, I'm trying to think of how to describe these two books without being kind of mean, because I don't want to make it seem that way at all. I enjoyed reading both of them, but they are both kind of silly novels. I wouldn't take them too seriously. They kind of have a Hallmark movie feel to them. The plot line is a little juvenile for both of them, and I mean that in the kindest way possible. They were both so enjoyable for me to read. Very, very easy, light reads, especially if you just want to completely wind down and not take the book too seriously or have to consider a very thought-provoking plot. Hopefully that makes sense. So the Amish romance is called The Quilter's Son, Liam's Choice by Samantha Gillian Bayar. I really did love this book. When I was a teen, I was pretty obsessed with the Amish lifestyle, so I would read a lot of fiction novels about the Amish, and while they are fiction, I still felt like I was learning more about that lifestyle, and I felt like this book was really nostalgic to that time when I was reading tons of those novels. Now, since this is such a short book, I don't really feel like I can say a lot about it without giving too much away, but what I can say is that I didn't feel like quilting was at the forefront of this plot. I did enjoy the book very, very much, but quilting was kind of a side plot to it. The main connection was that Liam was working on repairing a quilt shop, and that was really the extent to the connection to quilting. There wasn't a lot mentioned about, fabric choices or patterns or anything like that. It was mainly just that he was working to repair a quilt shop. Like I said, I felt like this was a Amish romance type book, and the romance story was really the forefront to this book, and that was just fine with me. I would definitely recommend it, and I really enjoyed reading it. Now, the other book that I read is called A Stitch in Crime, a Taylor Quinn quilt shop mystery novella by Tess Rothery. And again, this was another enjoyable read for me. Now, I will admit, because I don't want anybody coming back and getting mad at me or anything, but I do think this book had a bit more of a juvenile plot and writing style than even The Quilter's Son. But again, it was a really light and fun read, perfect for getting back into reading if you've kind of taken a break for a while and just want something quick and enjoyable and kind of has a light feel to it. Just like The Quilter's Son, I didn't feel like quilting was really at the forefront of this book. Again, I don't want to give a lot of the plot away, but this whole mystery and story just revolves around a person who works in a shop finding a girl outside of the shop wrapped in a quilt, and she has a concussion and kind of forgot who she is or what happened to her, and the person who works at the shop is going to help her figure that out. And I'm saying this because this all happens right at the beginning of the book. It really isn't a mystery that is what the whole story is about and revolves around. Now, next to the first book I mentioned, this book has to be my second favorite on this list. It was so, so good. So the fourth book on my list is Quilt as Desired, a Harriet Truman Loose Threads mystery by Arlene Sashitano. I probably didn't pronounce that right, but this book was an excellent read. I didn't want to stop reading it. It was so, so good. So what I really loved most about this book is that it is a true mystery novel, but even though it is a full-on mystery taking place, quilting stays at the forefront of this book the whole way through. They are talking about fabrics. There is quilt shows happening. The women are entering their quilts into a quilt show. There is long arm quilting talk. There is talk about tools and repairs needing to be made to quilts. There is so much quilting going on in this story, and I absolutely enjoyed every page of this book. Now, even with the mystery happening in this book, there's a little bit of romance going on too. So there were so many different aspects of this book to enjoy. Now, if you don't like gruesome or heart-pounding suspense books, don't worry. I don't feel like this book had any gore or anything like that. I would definitely consider it more of a light mystery. It was really, really an enjoyable read. And in fact, I already bought book 2 because I enjoyed this book that much. Now, the last book on my list is Quilt City Murders. This was actually the first book I read in the series of quilt novels. However, it is the last on my list because it was the least favorite of mine out of the 5 books. Now, I'm going to start with what I enjoyed most about this book first, and that is that it was, again, a true mystery novel. I was on the edge of my seat wondering what was happening, and well, I don't want to give too much away. I keep saying that. But I stayed on the edge of my seat. I really wanted to figure out what happened. So that kept me really engaged with the story. I also felt like quilting did stay at the forefront of this book throughout it. Again, this book revolved around a quilt show, and as you may have suspected with Quilt City Murders, this book takes place in Paducah, which is often considered Quilt City. So I really enjoyed that quilting stayed at the forefront. I also thought it was fun that each chapter has a quilting term associated with it. So that was a lot of fun as well. When I'd get to the start of a new chapter, the first thing I looked at was what quilt term was there at the top. So something that was fine with me in this book, since I do read a lot of mystery and suspense novels, was that this book did have a lot more descriptive terms that were used to describe the deaths that took place in this book. So I would definitely classify this one as a bit more gory. It wasn't too bad, but it definitely wasn't a light mystery like some of the other books that are on this list. However, there were some things that really annoyed me in this book, and there was a lot of negativity talked about around quilting. The main character of the book often talked about some of the people in that town that they knew that quilted, and kind of talked negatively about them hoarding fabric or having too much of a fabric stash, or fabric not being nice enough, or their quilting style not being nice, like the color combinations they chose, or their skill level being really low when it came to quilting. So there was a lot of that sort of thing happening in the book that I just really didn't enjoy. I didn't like seeing all that negativity around quilting. So that was my personal preference there, something that I noticed that kind of really bothered me, but it didn't take away from me finishing the book because I really wanted to know what happened. So with that said, I will say that I did enjoy the mystery aspect, the plot development, and all that enough to say that I would read the next book in this series. So while there were a few things that I didn't particularly like, I did think it was well written enough that I would definitely read the next book in the series because I enjoyed it enough to continue the series. So those are the 5 quilting novels that I read recently and are ones that I enjoyed enough to let you know about them. Now, if you have some quilting novels that I didn't mention here that you would suggest, please let me know down in the comments. Now, if you're interested in reading any of these books, I will have the titles and the names as well as the link to them on Amazon down in the description of this video. If you'd like to pick them up and read them as well, the link will be there for you. I will say that some of the books I found on thriftbooks.com. I love looking there. I don't mind if my books are used, and you can usually get them at a really good price. So I will link to that site down in the description as well. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel and giving this video a watch. I really appreciate it. And if you are not subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to consider subscribing. I do post a lot of videos about quilting, mainly quilting tutorials, but I do like to do videos like this every now and then where I review notions and different quilting supplies. And this time it just happened to be a review on books. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.